These guys had none of that. They talk about it multiple times throughout the criminal complaint, wanted to have Netflix documentaries made after them.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Change Agents, an Ironclad original presented by our spicy friends over at Firecracker Farm. Today, we are going to be talking about life inside of America's intelligence landscape. And my guest today is Tracy Walder. Tracy is a former CIA operative and FBI special agent who has turned her experience in intelligence and counterterrorism into a career as an educator, author, and speaker. She joined the CIA after meeting a recruiter at USC and worked at the Counterterrorism Center on mission tracking terrorist threats and weapons of mass destruction across multiple countries. Then, she later joined the FBI's Los Angeles field office as a special agent, focusing on Chinese counterintelligence, and earned multiple awards for her service. Let's dive into the show. Okay, talk to me. How did you become a spy? All right. You went to USC. I asked this to everybody who's been recruited because I want it to be like the movie that had Colin Farrell, where the recruiter's at a bar and they're circling little things and sliding it.
Is that the movie?
Yes, exactly.
That movie was actually filmed at CIA when I was at CIA. So there were
Awkward.
Yeah, I know. So they typically the movie stars come, but then we have to stay in our skits or in our vaults.
Okay.
Obviously we can't.
So
Sure.
were you recruited like that? Because
No.
now that I've talked to enough people, I didn't realize that essentially at this point, 2026, when you got recruited at USC, maybe it was different, but in 2026, they're like, or 2025, they're like, yeah, this is guy, he's an adjunct professor, but also he's a recruiter for the CIA. They're just on the nose with it.
Yeah. I don't want to sound too blunt. I think part of the problem we're always combating, right, is Hollywood.
Yeah.
Hollywood wants it to seem like this deep, dark, exactly what you referred to about the
Yeah.
recruit. And it's honestly really not like that. I was recruited in 98 is when I started like my whole process. So again, this was a while ago and it's still that way. And so I literally gave them my resume at a career fair. There was a table, it said Central Intelligence Agency, and I handed them, this is before really online
Yeah.
uploading of resumes. And so I handed them my paper resume and just like continued on with my day and they called. So that's how it worked for me. And it sounds like I teach now as an adjunct professor, and it seems to be the same for my students too that come and recruit at the university. So it's very
Huh.
open and out.
What was it about intelligence work that was interesting? In 98, so I joined the Navy in 96 and I wanted to go down the SEAL pipeline and I was limited by what I could find in the library, which is a concept my children don't really understand. And it drives me absolutely crazy. So I had what I thought was an okay amount of information. It is laughable in comparison to what people can find on the internet now. So what was it about the intelligence apparatus or agency that drew you into that? Because I assume you had limited information as well.
Yeah, and also some of that, again, to go back to it, was framed by pop culture. First of all, thank you for your service. My dad is also ex-Navy. I think for me, pop culture at that time, because we're sort of contemporaries, was very much we are still James Bond, I think, was still Sean Connery, right? Like it was that's kind of how it was portrayed. I
Yeah.
actually had zero interest in intelligence. I didn't even know that that was a career. CIA at that time was very focused on Russia,
Mhm.
as well as kind of Central and South America with the kind of counter narcotics plan and then coup d'etats that were going on there too. For me, it wasn't about going into the CIA. It was about where can I work the counterterrorism mission. So it was sort of
Interesting.
reverse, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. And so for me, and I'm guessing for you too, growing up, Al Qaeda wasn't formed until 1989. So it was new. And really, my view of terrorism was like the Oklahoma City bombing, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what was going on for me. And so, yes, Al Qaeda was doing attacks, but they were in Africa or they were in the Middle East. And when you're sort of a teenager, right, you're very self-centered. And if it's not occurring in the US, then, it doesn't matter. That's sort of how my brain, unfortunately, was working at the time.
Yeah.
But in 1997, I was working out and, they have those TVs up in gyms. And so it was,
Yeah, just to help you work out,
yeah,
because that's
exactly.
what you need is mirrors to crush your feelings of self-worth and judge everybody else in televisions.
Yes, and, someone had the TV was on, I think it was CNN,
Yeah.
and I was watching, and it was these 2 gentlemen, the Peters, Peter Arnett and Peter Bergen. They were in a cave, and they were talking to this guy that he had 2 AK-47s next to him, and so I just listened to it, and it was in that where, Osama bin Laden it was the only interview he ever did with a Western news
Yep.
source.
No, I'm very familiar.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and he issued his declaration of war against the United States in that interview. And so for me, I was like, "Oh, wait, what? You wanna come kill us?" Right? And so that is what actually piqued my interest, and I'm sure you understand this. Growing up, I didn't know who worked counterterrorism because it wasn't a thing. September 11th hadn't happened, right?
Yeah.
And so we didn't have these majors in college. So I just started taking like modern Middle Eastern history, introduction to Islam, like whatever I could understand about that area of the world. And so when I went to that recruiter, all I knew was that CIA does things overseas. Maybe they work this CT stuff. And
Hmm.
that's what I asked him. And so for me, it was less about intelligence and more about where can I work this CT issue.
Yeah, I don't think I heard the term Al Qaeda, and I'm guessing that I heard the term for the first time when it was the Cole bombing.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but I actually don't remember that. I just know that there's a tie between that and 9/11. It is very possible that I didn't even know Al Qaeda existed until 2001. As embarrassing
I
as it is to say, and I had
no,
already been in the SEAL teams for 5 years.
that's not embarrassing. I think that that is 99.9% of the world, to be completely honest with you. I think
Yeah,
that
but I
was
worked in counterterrorism, kind of. It was totally conceptual. But I mean, you want to talk about looking backwards, you're talking about the agency and the legacy of kind of the Cold War, the optic. We were training on Vietnam era tactics. Right? I
right,
mean, it was wild because the last combat exposure for the SEAL community was in the 60s and 70s.
right.
And holy cow, we got our asses kicked when we went over to Afghanistan and Iraq. Thankfully, we were fighting people that were generations behind technologically and tactically. And we learned very quickly. But you want to talk about a rear facing optic. My goodness.
And it was interesting because, it's funny that you mentioned that with the kind of Cold War tactics, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the last time that we had been in Afghanistan was, what, the '80s,
Mhm.
right? But prior to going in Operation Enduring Freedom. And the interesting thing was when I was, flying the drones in Afghanistan, they were firing at us with Soviet weapons that
Yeah.
had been left there and abandoned, right, since the 1980s. And I just thought, wow, this is so interesting that that's the only exposure that we have had and they have had, right, to combat since 1984, basically.
It's wild. What was it like being at the agency during 9/11?
I mean, it's probably no different than where, you were at.
I was in
I'm
an
so
apartment. I was sitting in an apartment in San Diego, sleeping, randomly turned the television on. Probably, I liked it. Like it's so funny the way your brain can reform things, and you probably hear somebody else tell the story, and you're like, oh yeah, that was my experience too. Like I turned the TV on right before the second plane impacted,
oh my
I,
gosh, yeah.
which I did. I didn't see the first one, because they were still talking about what a horrible aviation accident. This is going to reframe how the FAA treats, and then second plane, and all bets were off. I thought, so, I was a Navy SEAL at the time. There was definitely a matter of seconds before I got called and got sent on the big mish. So we all were thinking we were going to go to work. We didn't do anything. I didn't get over until Afghanistan until like late 2002. And it was for the security detail for Hamid Karzai. Then I went to Iraq first and then went back to Afghanistan. So I'm not exactly sure how much time I had from watching turning on the TV, but yeah, I was in an apartment. You were working,
Yes.
at the agency. So I think our experiences were probably different.
So I was obviously, I got lucky, and I'm sure you know this, government. When I started at CIA, you don't get to say, like, "This is where I wanna work, and
Yeah.
this is what I'm gonna do." Like, it
Yeah.
definitely doesn't work like that. And so I got very, very lucky. I got put straight into CT. like straight into the CTC, which I have to be honest, this was pre 9/11. So people are like, ew, why do you want to be there? Like all the glories in the Russia bridge, right? Like, and
For
so
now.
at the time, right, it was. And so I was kind of on this like road less traveled, I guess, right? Like we were a much smaller group than clearly we were after 9/11. And what was interesting, people asked me, I was looking at terrorist training camps, I think, before all of that in Afghanistan. People asked me if I knew. I
Mm,
didn't know. But one of the things that I noticed, and we all noticed, was all the camps vacated. Like there, it was like crickets. Obviously, going back now, we know, but
yeah.
like back then, we didn't know. We were just wondering where are they going to set up shop next. So on 9/11, I got to work. I always came to work at 6 a.m. I am an early. That's just who I am. And then I was not at the farm then, so I went to my, cubicle because it's really sexy, we all work in, and I just started going through cable traffic because that's pretty normal, that's what you do when you're not overseas,
Yeah.
and you have to remember, we don't bring cell phones in, and we don't have access to open internet. So, unless I have that TV on in my office, as crazy as it sounds, I might not know about things in
Yeah.
real time. And so we have 2 phones at our desk, right? One's a obviously encrypted phone and one is an outside
The red
phone.
and the black phone or the
Yes,
green
exactly,
phone.
exactly.
I am
Yeah,
very familiar.
I know you are, I just didn't know if listeners or as I was
Yeah.
just again. And so, my outside phone actually rang. It never rang, to be totally honest with you. The only people that would ever call was I believe it was, like, my mom to tell me my grandpa had died, right? Like,
Yeah.
this was and so I was freaked out, so I picked it up, and it was a friend of mine who did work for the agency, but she was in an outbuilding. Let's just put it I'll just leave it at
Yep.
that. So
Offsite.
yes, and so she said, "You gotta turn on the TV. A plane hit the World Trade Center." And so I turned on the TV, kind of like you, just in time to see the second plane hit.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it was terrorism until the second plane hit. When I had heard about the first plane, what's so interesting, and you may remember this, I think it was a New York Mets player had accidentally flown
Yes. Yes. It
that
was a small plane. He had
it was
flown it into an apartment building.
with his son, I think was
Yes.
in it. It was really sad. And I think it had happened in August or July of that year.
It
So
was
like,
pretty proximal. It was
yeah,
proximal enough that that's why I think the
that's what
reporters were
meant it.
saying like, hey, this
Yes.
now we got 2 of these. The FAA is going to come down hard on private pilots.
Yes.
That's what they were talking about when the
And
second
that's
plane
where
went
my
in.
initial when my friend had told me that, I thought, "Oh gosh, not this again." Right? Like, truly, that's what I had thought. But when the second plane hit, I actually knew
Yeah.
instantaneously.
Same
I
here.
absolutely knew what it was. And so, yeah, it's interesting that yeah, and obviously, people asked what it was like in the office. It wasn't loud and crazy. It was like the air got sucked out of the room. It was really quiet. And all of the managers or, all their doors sort of
Yeah.
closed. And we just sort of sat there, I guess, waiting to be told what to do.
How rapidly I think it's safe to say the intelligence apparatus, whether it be externally looking, by doctrine, the agency, internally looking, the FBI, which by the way, you're the only person I've ever met that worked for both. We have to get to that at some point. And maybe the listeners aren't aware of this, but by doctrine, the agency is not supposed to be internally looking
Correct. Right.
and investigating. That's the role of the FBI, the head law enforcement. There's so many other, there's DA, like all of this stuff, the intelligence apparatus. I think it's safe to say that they took it on the chin for sure
Yes.
that day.
100%.
How quickly did you feel the impact of that? I mean, how quickly did the marching orders come down? Like, what happened? We are finding the root cause of this, and all hands on deck. We're kinetically going back in the other direction.
Actually, I have to be completely honest with you, we were shielded a lot from that.
Hmm.
And I think because the problem that we saw and my job was to stop the next attack.
Yeah.
And so it's not that no one cared, it's just that focus, right? The figuring out what happened to all of that. Our managers actually did an excellent job of being like, okay, y'all are like the workers. I was kind of a pre-managerial position at that point. You guys need to figure out this next attack and keep America safe. We are going to answer these questions from Congress because we need y'all to figure this out. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? So they blunted, excuse me, a lot of that for us. I don't know if that's good or bad. I really don't know. But also too, I mean, I remember sitting in meetings immediately after September 11th and, someone would be crying that they felt bad and, people just obviously I'm not going to cuss on here, but saying, shut
It's the
their
internet. You can say whatever you want.
say, shut the fuck up. No one cares what you
Yeah.
think now. Like no one cared that you felt bad or you felt to blame. And that's good. Like we have a mission, right? Like no one
Yeah.
cares what you think. And so I think we were just so blunted. Again, I think that was for the safety of the American people. Like we had this mission to focus on, like, let's stop the next attack. And our managers were like, we are going to handle this situation about where the fallout occurred.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are rapidly approaching the holiday season, which means that you need to be thinking about gifts. If you want to give a gift that actually has some substance, that everyone really loves, I'll highly recommend a product that I personally use every day and can stand behind. Firecracker Farm Hot Salt. Firecracker Farm is a sponsor, yes, but that's not why I talk about them. I choose to do so because it's a genuinely great product. It's fantastic, small batch, made with care, and it delivers. Delicious is really an understatement. It has the perfect heat to flavor ratio that you can fully control and elevates everything you put it on, from eggs to steak to chicken, or even as something as simple as pasta. The gear is solid too. It comes in a really nice stainless steel push grinder. It's well built and feels right in your hand. I have to say, it has a great tactile quality that makes it super satisfying to use. I'm telling you, you want this, and it makes an awesome gift. The best part is, when you buy one, you're supporting a small American family business, and you're buying something that's truly high quality that you'll use every single day. Alex and his family put a ton of love and dedication into this product. One small catch, you are not going to find this on Amazon last minute. They make hot salt in small batches, and inventory goes quickly. So if you want this, you need to make the move now because they are going to sell out. So get your gift shopping done today. Head over to firecracker.farm and use the code Ironclad, all caps, all one word, at checkout, and you're going to get 10% off of your order.
Stick around after today's episode for a free preview of Target Intelligence, PSYOP.
A lot of dark stuff going on in the world right now, and it's to the point where I don't even believe my own eyes anymore because I cannot verify what people are saying about all the political violence, the division. I partnered with this production company called Ironclad, and we're doing an 8-part audio series on PSYOPs, on why foreign countries, governments, maybe even our own government would conduct a PSYOP on its own people. And I just think that this series is going to be extremely important because it's going to open the eyes of people on why these things happen. You can head over to psyopshow.com, order it today. I think you're going to get a lot out of this. Who's pulling the strings? Who's pulling them?
You know, stop the next attack. I mean, of course, so that's a mission statement that never ends because there's always going to be somebody out there. I'm curious, you know, it's been over crazy, almost 25 years at this point.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah, wild. It was so focused externally. And that was, I guess that was a large portion of the role that I held as well. Like we required the intelligence apparatus, you know, the find, fix, finish, exploit, analyze, the 3FEA process. I mean, I was the third F, right? The intelligence would find, fixing them in place, finishing the threshold of the door, cool. But it was overseas, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, you know, does Iran have influence? All these things, the Middle East. I'm curious your thoughts. I feel like in those 25 years, we were relatively effective at doing that. But the talk I am hearing most common, let's call it in the last 12 months, is the next attack is coming from inside of the United States. And I'm curious your thoughts on that. I think we were relatively effective externally, but I also think now in those 25 years, I mean, I think the number one mistake people can make is to underestimate their enemy. And any enemy, you know, that is paying attention to the U.S. and understands our capability, let's call it our kinetic capability outside of our borders. It would be a reasonable expectation that they would think, you know what, you know, the best way to do this is actually from inside. And that's what I'm seeing now. And I'm just curious your thoughts on the threat environment. Do you think it's equally from external as it is internal? Do you think it's still more external and less internal? Where would you put it?
I think it's both. And so I have actually been listen, Al-Qaeda attacked us because we underestimated them. And we failed to be creative about how they might attack us. Like, full stop. That is just what we do. We are terrible at wargaming. We are
Yeah.
terrible at being proactive. Again, I love my country. I've served my country just like you. But there are some things we have to recognize that we're bad at. And that is definitely one of them. But I have been railing about this for, gosh, almost 10 years now. And everyone gets upset with me. But listen, the next attack, in my opinion, is going to come from inside. But it's not going to look. Again, this is all just my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say that I have some kind of an insider track.
In your opinion, at what day and time will this happen? This is what people want from the intelligence community,
Right.
because I
And
don't want to say I argue with people online, but I might have commentary from time to time. Well, what good is the intelligence if we don't know when it's going to happen? I'm like, stop watching the movie 24.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And I think the way I see it is this. Back in 2000, 2001, right? Like a pre 9/11 world, Al-Qaeda, who I now view as like the grandpa, right, of the terrorist organizations. Yes, we had the internet. Of course, we've had the internet, but it wasn't as rampant in terms of radicalization like it is today, right? People had to go to training camps in Afghanistan, go to training camps in Iraq. That's what they were doing to become radicalized and then commit these attacks worldwide. Now, because of the prolific nature of the internet, no one needs to travel anywhere to become radicalized. And ISIS, obviously, I hate ISIS, but they're brilliant at it.
Yeah.
And they're brilliant at targeting, and they're brilliant at using it. And that is what is happening. If you look at everything that has happened here in the US that's been stopped, thank goodness, they have all been individuals who are either US citizens, so natural born citizens, or people who became citizens legally, right, here in the US. And I think the problem, I'll just be very blunt, we don't want to feel that people we know are capable of doing these kinds of things. And so it's much easier to put that onus outside, right? And we need to, if we don't start getting out of that, the next attack, in my opinion, is going to be our fault, because we have to get out of that mentality. Now, it's not to say someone from another country wouldn't come here and commit an attack. But if you just look at what happened in Michigan and Jersey and
Yeah.
Washington just like last week, all of those people were from here, all of them. And so I think, but all of them have been radicalized by ISIS in Syria. That's ultimately where they wanted to travel to. And so I also don't think, again, that an attack is going to sort of look 9/11 style, if that makes sense. When I was an FBI agent, it was always so much easier to track people in the US who are doing big, big things, because they're going to mess up. Someone's going to mess up, right? Like
Yeah.
somewhere in that logistics line, whatever. Al-Qaeda, ISIS all know that. And so if you look at a lot of these attacks, if we look at what happened in New Orleans, right? That was a very, I don't want to say simple, I don't want to give people ideas, but it wasn't some elaborate attack, but it inflicted a lot of damage. Same if we look at Michigan, right? Same if we
Yeah.
look at, they were just simply doing basically small arms training, is what it sounds like to me, is what they were doing to then commit those attacks on sort of this larger scale. We're not talking about hijacking planes and flying them into buildings.
Yeah, I actually have, I'm going to give some details out just for the listeners about the Michigan attack, because I was going to ask you about this. This was within, I think, the last 7 to 10 days. So far, via court filings, two 20-year-olds from Dearborn, Michigan were charged with conspiracy to transfer firearms and ammunition for terrorism, each having acquired AR-15 style rifles, shotguns, pistols, and hundreds of rounds of ammo. A third Michigan man was later arrested and added to the complaint. Investigators said he traveled with a minor to scout an amusement park roughly 3 hours from Dearborn and searched online for, "Is it crowded on Halloween weekend?" While the arrests were made and weapons were seized, which included tactical gear, vests, GoPro cameras, firearms, etc. Authorities say no specific target or date was definitively known publicly at the time of the disruption. And it seems as if the case highlights a shift in domestic terrorism where younger perpetrators, online radicalization, use of coded language, Pumpkin Day, that's not super coded. I'm not trying to give anybody ideas, but if you're searching for that in October, I mean, it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to bring in on this case to figure it out. Targeting of significant occasions like Halloween to maximize impact. That is definitely, it's different, like you described. And like you said, they're all here from the US. I can see an organization, if I was Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and again, I don't want to give anybody ideas, I wouldn't bring in a bunch of people. I would bring in key influencers and basically force multipliers would be the term that we used to use. And you wouldn't need that many. And the stats are what the stats are in the border penetration or lack of border control for the last, we'll just call it 10 years. This administration, previous administration, it is what it is. I worry about the combination of the two. But I wonder what it takes, because to me, it's an irrational mindset to get to. I wonder what it takes for these ideas to get their hooks in these young men and women to the point where it gets to, I'm assuming these guys hit the FBI radar. I'm assuming what it takes, what those steps are. And I'm curious whether your time at the agency or the FBI, are there any similarities in the types of people that are generally more, shall we say, malleable to these ideas?
I'm actually so glad that you asked that question. So obviously I work for News Nation now. I'm their national security contributor. And we talked about this, I believe last Friday, on their show. I've read the entirety of the criminal complaint. The one thing Chris Cuomo asked me, what is like the one thing that stands out to you, is the difference in terms of what attracted these particular individuals to this. It was very fascinating to me. So typically when I was at the agency, I had the opportunity to talk to terrorists, find out why they did what they did. And what was interesting is most of the time there was for two reasons. The first was religious fanaticism, right? They had perverted the faith and were doing that. The second, though, was they had come from failed or fragile states. Al-Qaeda had rescued them, so they felt beholden to them, therefore are committing these attacks on their behalf. These guys had none of that. They talk about it multiple times throughout the criminal complaint, wanted to have Netflix documentaries made after them. Yes, that
was their underlying motivation.
Correct. And they talk about it not just once, not just twice, multiple times throughout the entirety of the complaint. And that, in my opinion, is a huge departure, because the New Orleans attacker, he didn't do that for that reason either. He was experiencing some domestic issues, instability at home, financial instability. This was new, to be honest with you, to me. And I've spent time working counterterrorism. These guys want to be infamous, famous, whatever. They want to be influencers. And I actually can understand that now. If, again, I'm pushing 50, right? But if I look in the mind of a 20-year-old now, that is how they are gauging a lot of their success, to be totally honest. That's what these guys wanted. They wanted Netflix documentaries made after them. They wanted 48 hours crime ID shows made after. I mean, really specific. And I found that to be fascinating, obviously in a bad way, but fascinating, because being internet famous is not something I value in life, but it's something they clearly valued in life. And you even seem surprised by that. But that was their main motivating factor.
That is, so I'm familiar with the two reasons or backstories for a lot of people who are associated with those organizations. Another one I would maybe add to that are young children that are radicalized, not necessarily saved, but radicalized, and you'd see it like in the tribal regions in Pakistan, Waziristan, with super heavy, religiously dogmatic mosques, and these kids that they're just so steeped in it that they don't even have a chance to develop outside of that ideology. But what you're talking about, to me, that is such a jarring departure.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say about that. That is, because that's like nonlinear. That's like holding out a 45-pound plate and you let go of it and it doesn't drop. Like, I don't know how to get my mind to wrap around that. I guess I can understand, everybody wants to be well, not everybody, because I'm in the same boat as you are. I have no interest. I'm pushing 50 as well. And no interest whatsoever at being social media famous. But perhaps that is the currency of the day.
I think it is.
But you want to do that through you see young women and men, like they'll do whatever, dance videos or makeup videos and all that stuff. But you want to take this and align that with a terrorist ideology and kill or hurt as many people as possible. I mean, and also, did they expect that they were going to live to see this, or they just wanted to be their legacy?
I'm going to go with a little bit of both. Some of them, when I was just looking, because they have some of the chats, you can kind of read some of them, not all of them, that the FBI has. Some of them, one of them definitely believed he was going to die, right? He was going to be a suicide, murder, if you will. Others don't even talk about their own death, right, as a result of this. So I have to be honest with you, I'm not sure that they really thought that through. It's just
Yeah.
in looking through it. But again, they're 19 and 20. I don't know if I would have thought stuff through at 19 or 20. But I think some of them didn't necessarily care if they died because then they would be famous. And that is crazy to me. But then when I think about some of the things that exist on Telegram, Discord, I mean, even let's be honest, Instagram and some other
Yeah.
places too, I don't put it past anyone because I do think some of our currency is also violence, shock, awe, whether it's
Yeah.
real, whether it's true, whether it's not, it increases your followers.
You can see that in traditional media. I mean, it's well documented, a positive versus a negative story. I mean, the classic cliche, if it bleeds, it leads, which is,
Yes,
it
you're
sucks to
right.
say, and that's not always the case, but there are more negative stories than there are inspirational and positive. The data is resoundingly back on that. Today's episode is brought to you by Mizzen and Main. I tell you what, this was a wild one when this organization reached out to sponsor the show because I have actually been wearing their product for the better part of a decade. I spend a good portion of every year traveling the world doing public speaking, and the only clothes that I wear when I do so are Mizzen and Main. They look amazing, incredibly professional, but they are by far the most comfortable professional/athletic technology wear that I have ever worn. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel great. The shirts and pants, they look very refined, yet they are stretchy, lightweight, moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, and completely machine washable, so no ironing or dry cleaning is required. These things are super easy to travel with as well. Mizzen and Main is a veteran-led organization committed to supporting those who have served. They offer a year-round military discount and proudly give back to veteran organizations. For a limited time, Mizzen and Main is giving our listeners 25% off their first order for Black Friday and Cyber Monday at mizzenandmain.com. Promo code Ironclad20. That's Mizzen, M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-A-I-N.com. Promo code Ironclad20 for an exclusive 25% off. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main at stores in select states. You know, and again, to go back to the charter of the organizations, and since you are now the only person I know that worked for both, you got the agency looking externally, looking at things like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and then the FBI finding these people. There's a crossover there because we're talking an international ideology, radicalizing people inside of the U.S. How do the agency and the FBI work hand in hand in this to make sure that both of their tranches are clean and that we're not taking a bucket of black water and white water and making gray in the middle and violating our Constitution?
Well, it's interesting because the 9/11 Commission found that a lot of that is actually how September 11th happened,
Yeah.
right? And that the FBI, Mark Rossini, who was one of the FBI agents that was actually detailed to us on September 11th, couldn't pass a name of someone to the FBI because he was prohibited by law from
Yeah.
doing that. That would have put him on a watch list. All the things. I don't blame him at all. He was just doing his job and what the law bound him to do. And so I do think that the government realized like we do need to change that perhaps a little bit to stop these things. But one of the things that I will say is now for the CIA and for the FBI, they have set up task force centers, which are good, in which they're actually physically together. And so that's a good thing. Also, you know, the CIA is passing as much information as they legally can now. They've
Yeah.
made it okay to pass a first name and a last name, but not, you know, the text of a phone conversation, which I think we can all agree is probably a good idea. Um, Also, typically, at least now, from what I know, is the FBI is taking the lead, and rightly so, in terms of getting, you know, FISA warrants and being able to listen to these individuals because that would be the right thing to do. Just even in this case, this Michigan case, the FBI was tracking them for just about a year before they made the arrest.
Were they able to determine their first touch points to the ISIS ideology? Were they able to track back like where they first dipped their toes in the pool?
Probably that's just not in the criminal complaint.
Yeah.
Um, it, it sounds to me, actually, it's the Washington guy who's sort of the linchpin of it, if you will. But he was a minor when all of this started, which I think complicated matters
Yeah.
even more. But he was talking to known ISIS people overseas. And I think that's then what sort of was that touch point. Now, when they started having these conversations, I don't know because the FBI sort of picks them up mid
Yeah.
convo when they find out about them.
God, I would love to walk a breadcrumb trail back to initial contact. How does a minor even, I don't know. These are things I've never searched on Google, mostly because I'm sure I'm on enough watch lists as it is anyway, given my background. I don't need to end up on a Google watch list.
Well, I think ISIS, if you want me to be honest with you, ISIS reaches out to them. I mean, that's for
Through
the
what
most
mechanisms? We talking social media? Is it just they're putting out stuff on
social media.
YouTube and hoping that they engage?
No, I think it's probably both. In this one, in my opinion, and I said this on Cuomo shows too, I think Meta has some explaining to do,
Yeah.
in my opinion, because so the FBI initially they're actually first talking on Instagram.
Hmm.
And they have pictures with ISIS flags, pictures with knives. Like, why is no one right? Like, that's a problem too. And
Yeah.
Meta is an American company, right? That's Zuckerberg. That's not
The answer is volume.
right. Oh, God.
Because I would believe, and I bet you would agree with this, that Meta is not out there behind the scenes in some conference room that I always imagine this is how it goes. Dimly lit, perfect for Hollywood, just like, all right, guys.
Conversations.
Totally.
Like,
Streams and just like,
yes.
all right, guys, we need to really increase our ISIS influence. Like, I don't believe that's happening. I do believe that they want to do their best. I don't think they can track the volume of traffic on their own platforms. I think they could, but it would cause a lot of censorship on things that don't categorically fall into that. And so that they have this risk versus reward ratio. I don't know if they can solve that, to be honest.
I don't think they can solve it. I don't think it's solvable. However, the one caveat I will say is that if you do have someone with an ISIS flag on any of these platforms, and I get it, they're not omniscient. Absolutely not. I totally agree with you. However, there does need to be automatic filter features that if that is put up, that is immediately flagged and taken down. That doesn't even require a human, to be completely honest with you, to go through and vet that. And so the problem is I think ISIS saw that, right? Because they have the ability to see that. ISIS saw that and was like, these are people we're going to message. And these are people we're going to start going after. And I think it's no different that at CIA, you spot, assess, develop, recruit, right? That's how ISIS is literally doing the same thing, but with people here in the US. It's no different.
Why'd you decide to go from the agency to the FBI?
I was a little tired.
I mean, it's as good of an answer as any. I don't feel like you got much more rest at the Bureau, though. I feel like they were also relatively busy.
I think the issue and it's funny, I'm still very close with people from the agency. I didn't leave under some like bad terms or anything like that. I just did not want to be overseas anymore. I've been in Africa. I've been in the Middle East. I've been in Europe. Like, I think because of the nature of 9/11, my job was a little crazy. And I think I just couldn't sustain that anymore. Just like wasn't humanly possible. And I realized that's not something about the agency that's going to change. As you mentioned before, their mission is external, overseas, no problem. I don't want to change that about them. And so I thought, all right, I love this C-team mission, but I'd like to do that primarily stateside. So again, I'm going to apply to the FBI. So I left the CIA on a Friday and my Quantico class started on Monday.
Oh, you had to go through their basic academy as well?
Yes, it's different. It's definitely the farm and Quantico are in my opinion crazy different. They're not the same at all.
That checks out. My optic on Langley is obviously Point Blank, where Keanu Reeves is rolling around in the rain and shooting targets with a pistol that are exploding. I'm like, yes. And retrieving, I was going to say retrieving bricks from the bottom of the pool. He did that at the LA field office. It's not a big deal. If you haven't gone back and watched it, it's worth it just for that opening sequence.
I would say that the farm was definitely more cerebral in nature.
It's different jobs.
It's a different job. And I don't think people realize that, to be totally honest with you. We are not law enforcement officers at the CIA. We are at the FBI. And so there is a different physical, tactical, situation that's going on there.
How long did you stay at the FBI?
So I was only at the FBI for 2 years.
Really? How
It
come
was
so short?
pretty bad.
What'd you
Don't know
do?
I don't know how much you want to get into this, but, I was pretty seriously harassed, when I was
Really?
there. Mhm. Mhm.
I wish, well, I don't want to condemn the FBI,
I
but,
don't, and I
but
don't. I still have
it
friends.
doesn't surprise me. That is a male-dominated, oriented organization from my understanding of the male versus female ratio.
Yeah.
And I understand what you're saying. That sucks.
It
And
didn't have to be like that because
yeah,
at CIA listen, I was in Afghanistan, like, with SEALs, right? I had 0 problems. Literally 0 problems. Like, none.
yeah,
All my bosses were men. And so I guess I just assumed it would be the same
yeah.
in in my opinion. I think the difference is we can get on board with a woman and gathering intelligence. I don't know how we feel about women kicking down doors at the FBI, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
It does. People ask me all the time whether or not I think women should be able to be SEALs, and my answer is I don't care. I believe in a stand.
Go for it.
I believe
Like,
in a standard, and a standard should be blind, and it should be reverse engineered from the real world execution of your job. All standards should be able to be drawn a direct line. Where does this come from? Now, make it blind. It's published, but it's blind, meaning there is no male or female. Like if you're a female, you have to be able to do this. If you're male, no, it's all comes from the battlefield. If you can pass that standard, I don't care.
go for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great. If
Yeah.
women can pass that exact same standard, I think they should be able to be SEALs if they can pass it.
I agree. I have no issue with that. And I think it's important to say the SEAL community is not full of angels. It's a community full of individuals. And if you were to get your hands on the wrong ones, let me tell you, your 0 bad experiences could have become numerous. And so what I'll say is oftentimes the actions of individuals don't represent the greater community. And I hope that that's the case for the FBI as well, because
No.
maybe you were just around a group of assholes, because sometimes they coalesce.
I think that it was a hybrid sort of
Yeah.
situation. I think I was obviously around a group of assholes. There's no question. I also think what I didn't account for, and this is something I don't know that you would think about, is at the time, the FBI hated the CIA. And so the fact that I
Oh.
came to CIA was a huge problem to the point, I mean, I remember it getting so bad that I graduated from Quantico, but my class, like Quantico supervisor at the time, was like, "Did you really work for the CIA?" And I'm like, "You had to come there and interview me." So like, what I don't he would purposely make my life
Yeah.
like more difficult, if that makes any sense. And the reality is I never said this, but I had like more actual field experience than literally anyone in my class. And so it was just a very disheartening situation. To your point about standards, one thing I felt was funny. They lowered them for the men and increased them for the women.
Interesting. That
And
is
so
not usually the way you hear that going.
So with firearms, for example, so to pass at the time, I'm sure it's changed, but to pass, you had to get an 85. Sure, fine, no problem, whatever. We have, 14 weeks of firearms training. Great,
Yeah.
super. I think I took it, I got like a 94, great pass, right? Like move on. No, we're going to need you to get 100 because we don't know that we can trust you. Really? Okay. 2 gentlemen in my class, one shot the webbing out in between his hands, another one shot down his thigh for improper trigger.
Yeah, that's
Control.
called putting a gun back in your holster with a finger on the trigger,
Correct.
which, let me tell you, that's an advanced technique that is not taught and never should be utilized.
Both of them were allowed to continue
Wow.
at the academy. I had to retake the test again, and I got to 100. But then it makes you wonder, the standard was obviously higher for me. Do we really want to trust those people with a weapon, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I shouldn't have agreed to retake it. I should have fought and said, like, I passed. I didn't because I just wanted to graduate and fit in, I guess.
Yeah.
But
You know who loves intelligence agencies hating each other? Our enemy.
terrorists.
I
yes.
mean, seriously. Are you looking for the perfect gift for the tactical or preparedness enthusiast in your life? TechPack delivers professional grade gear every month, including EDC essentials, tactical tools, and training aids, perfect for anyone who takes their gear seriously. This December, TechPack gets even better. The December Plus box is going to be packed with exclusive training tools, EDC equipment, and high-value items designed to level up any gear setup. They are also offering special holiday boxes. There's going to be a Christmas and Black Friday edition, and they are going to be stacked with premium high-quality gear, making them the perfect gift for yourself or someone on your list. And right now, if you use the code Ironclad, all one word, all caps, you're going to get a free tactical gift worth $70, bringing your total value to over $400 for signing up. So visit TacPack.com, use code Ironclad, and get the kind of gear that doesn't just sit on the shelf. What would be a better, more fertile opportunity to exploit gaps in coverage and communication than the two main agencies pointing at each other across the room, just giving each other the finger, like, you're number one. No, you're number one. Like, if I was looking at that, I mean, even as a battlefield tactic, I got an idea. Let's just get these two people completely obsessed with each other. And while they're doing that, I'm going to go rob the cookie jar. Awesome. No shots fired because they're shooting at each other. That is so idiotic.
100%. And things are better now. I will say that.
Yeah, I hope so.
What earlier on, and unfortunately, the harassment issue, I was not a part of this lawsuit because I graduated from the academy. It was a 19-woman, they were actually all veterans too, gender discrimination lawsuit against the FBI because they were all excused from the academy, and they won. It's the largest gender discrimination lawsuit ever settled in U.S. history.
I was not aware of that. How recently was that?
September 2024.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That was not well publicized.
Zero media coverage. And so I think that's what pissed me off, and that's why I put it in my book, is that I realized that this shit was still going on, right? And these women, I mean, they were one was ex-Navy, ex-Army, ex-Air Force. All of them were pillars of their classes, and they were harassed to the point of they had to leave. I got lucky, and I did graduate, but it's just, yeah.
Yeah, that's let's be better, FBI. Yeah. Let's be better.
Right.
What gaps do you think still exist? Do you think our intelligence and law enforcement apparatus are working better together? Do you think, I mean, is the analogy for these organizations, since they have, I mean, obviously investigation, and some of it is luck too. Whether, I mean, they're smart people. I'm sorry, you're not going to find the super nuanced James Bond of ISIS. You're not going to find that person, that guy or gal. You're going to find the idiot on social media. Is the best analogy, you see a dam, and when something sprouts out, these agencies do their best to put a little bit of a blocking mechanism in place? And what gaps do you still see that we could probably do better?
So I think the biggest gap that we see, in my opinion, is cyber. I really actually think that that's our biggest gap. We actually do the human stuff pretty well. We really do, because we've been doing that for a really long time. I think cyber is going to become, well, it already is, let's be honest, an even more massive problem. So at FBI, I worked Chinese counterintelligence. I worked the very first.
By cyber, are you talking like straight technology attacks? Like a couple weeks ago, and I'm not sure this was a cyber attack, but basically the Amazon Web Services went down, and people for the first time realized how thin the veneer is between everything they do online, to include the U.S. government and the internet.
Well, like Penn got hacked last week. Well, all their donor information was coming out. I mean, I think it's kind of a combination. Those are kind of threats I see is cyber, obviously just hardware and all of that. But then I also see China in and of itself is like rising, right? In terms of a multitude of different things. But we are very far behind in terms of that. Because you have to remember, China outnumbers us 50-1 in terms of cyber. 50-1.
Really?
Yes, that's so bad. That's actual data published by the FBI. They do about $600 billion of economic damage to us every year in terms of the stuff that they steal. All that's data published by the FBI, not like making it. You can go to their website. And so I think that for some reason is something we really have not wrapped our brain around successfully.
Why do you think that is?
I think one is volume of people, right? They're always going to beat us at that. There's nothing we can technically do about that. I also think too, and again, I'm a capitalist for sure, but the fact that they are communist, they can repurpose. So to your point, right, about Meta not having enough people, right, to just like look through all of this. They have 20 million people right now that they have told, like, stop doing this job and watch the internet. Like, we can't do that, and rightly so. I'm not saying we
Whew.
should. I'm not saying we
Yeah.
should. Please know that I'm not advocating for that. But I'm saying because of their structure of their government and their economy, they can do that. And so we have to find a way, in my opinion, to mitigate that. And that's part of the problem.
I think AI is going to be the only answer to that type of
Yeah.
numerical superiority.
Yeah. Because you're right. I mean, we just don't have the numbers. And again, we are capitalists, and that's a good thing. It's just that we have to understand what we're dealing with.
I just don't want to see the Terminator become a documentary because apparently when Skynet becomes aware, it's not awesome.
No, it's not.
Which, by the way, I think we actually just passed the date that in the Terminator movie, Skynet became self-aware. I believe it was this year. I think so. I think it was in 2025 because, of course, when they made that movie, they're like, humanity will definitely not exist by 2025. So that's a great number.
Yeah. It's like Back to the Future. They go back to like 2020 or something like that,
Yeah.
right? And they're like,
Flying
oh,
cars, still waiting for it. Come on, guys, really letting me down. Because I watched that movie too. Where's my hover skateboard?
yeah, the hover skateboards. I remember that. Yes.
What advice do you have for your average American that doesn't know where to go for great information? They don't know who to believe, and they're tired of hearing everything through a political lens, because I put myself into this category. I am so sick and tired of conventional media because you really only have choices of left or right, blue or red. And it's wild to see the same issue discussed. It almost sounds as if they're talking about two different things. What do you recommend for your average American from an informational perspective? And then maybe even beyond that, awareness to the fact that these type of threats do exist.
And that, I have to be honest with you, is my passion. Obviously, it's why I do what I do on social media. I don't do politics at all. I don't do anything through a
Thank
political
God. So tired of it.
lens. I'm over it. I'm tired of it. I don't want to deal with it.
We have 1 year left until the 2028 BS kicks off. We're going to be, if we're lucky, we have 1 year left.
And I think that's the problem, is we get so into whatever our lane is politically, like whatever you are. I think both sides are actually guilty of this, that we forget about what these rational threats are that are coming across that actually have nothing to do with politics. Because what will happen is, let's say I on social media talk about this Michigan theft. Let's just say I talk about that. What I will get under comments are, oh, this is Biden's fault for having, open borders.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Trump's fault for politicizing the FBI, right? So like give you both. That's what I'll get. Not what the questions you're asking.
Yeah.
How do we stop this? What do we do? Where are the holes, right? And that is going to lead to our own demise, in my opinion.
And some of that feedback, let's just say it can have levels of accuracy, and you could argue all day long.
100%.
Yeah, and it's like, cool, we have identified something in the past that could be a root cause. Well, maybe not even a root cause. That could be a compounding issue that allowed this to ferment or grow. But the important question is, how do we stop this? And in your answer, I don't want to fucking hear Republican or Democrat. I want something reasonable and actionable.
I don't want to hear that. And I think that, in my opinion, is going to be an actual security threat to us, only looking at things through like this particular lens. And I think politicians are guilty of that, especially right now too, whereas they weren't necessarily before. Listen, we've always been political. Like there's no question.
Yeah.
But right now, in my opinion, it's even worse. And again, to treat both sides equally, it's across the board, in my opinion. And so because we are so stuck on talking about these people and these characters and whose fault and all of those things, nothing's going to get done. So I personally feel, I don't know how blunt I can be.
Extremely.
One of the things that I am seeing on social media, and again, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or your horn or whomever's horn, is I was looking at someone told me to look at this person's page about what they were talking about, and they must have had well over 1 million followers. Fine. So I did not actually know who the person was. Going to be completely honest. I decided to do a Google search of this person, and this person saw really great things about national security and this and that and whatever. Okay, good. Fully expecting that they had a military background, or right, like that's why. No, the person was a food influencer. and this is their hobby.
Hmm.
And I think one of the things we really have to do, and I'm not trying to like put anyone down, but you also need to know what your background and what your capabilities are as an
Yeah.
influencer, like being responsible. And I think Googling who these people are and what their background is and what experience they have takes all of literally 2 seconds if you have your favorite influencers that you like to
Yeah.
listen to. So I think that's one thing we need to do. The other thing, so I work for News Nation, which actually is down the middle, sort of politically, and I like that. But and people get mad at me. They're like, why do you follow Trump? Why do you follow Biden? Why do you follow? Because I actually think getting this multitude of opinions helps us solve problems. So I tell people,
How
even
dare you not live in an echo chamber? What's wrong with you?
I tell my students, I was like, if Fox News is your favorite and your preferred, you also need to be looking at MSNBC as well.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with it, but at least if you hear that, it makes us at least understand, right? Like a point of view. And so I think if you are someone that's wanting to consume information and the issues, try to consume a multitude of different political sources, because I don't know that we're ever going to get out of politically tainted sources, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the old saying of consider the source is really important. I have people reach out to me for a variety of questions and commentary, and I tell people I don't consider myself to be an expert in anything. Like I've been out of the tactical game for a long time. There was a time where I could probably give you a really good answer, like on the manipulation of a firearm and a particular military tactic. But that doesn't make me an expert in geopolitics. And I don't ever proclaim to be. If people ask me for my opinion, I always like, listen, this is my opinion. This is an N of 1 based off what I've seen in my eyes, but I don't do this for a living. I'm giving you my opinion. And, there's a reason I don't walk up to homeless people and ask for financial advice, nor should anybody follow my advice on finances, because I would give you a template on how to lose money. So consider the source. And for the people putting out content, as much as this may not be nice to say, stay in your lane.
That's kind of how I feel. I And I hate to say that, I sound like a jerk, I guess, saying that, but I was pretty upset when I saw how many millions of followers that this person had without. I feel that it's very irresponsible and that we do have an ethical responsibility,
Yeah,
um, in my opinion.
I agree. How do you, what would you leave people with, American citizens? How can they prepare? Let's use Michigan as an example, just because maybe most people have heard about that.
Mhm.
What can your average person do to actually have any level of impact on that or preparation? What would your advice be?
This is gonna sound super elementary, but I've said this before. If you see something, you need to say something, particularly on social media. These boys, teenager, whatever we want to call them,
Yeah.
have friends. They had
Mm.
people that saw these ISIS flags on Instagram and no one did anything about it. We have a responsibility to be reporting these things. You can do that anonymously if you're scared, which I completely understand. But I do feel that we have become somewhat of these bystanders who are scared to do anything. And I understand why.
Yeah.
See what happens on the, New York subway in North Carolina recently. I get it. But a social media post, which is where a lot of this is happening, to be completely honest with you, I think we owe it to be reporting these things anonymously. And I think that's one thing that we can be doing that we just like don't talk about enough.
How about prep wise?
Hmm.
Preparation is actually, it's a pejorative term in a lot of people's minds because they think I'm talking about going and buying an old abandoned school bus and burying it in your backyard and turning it into I'm not saying people are like, oh, you shouldn't be a prepper. I'm like, no, I'm saying be prepared.
No, yeah, those are
There
two
is
different
it.
things.
Yeah. And you know what I land with a lot of people, because people, I don't care where people land on guns. It doesn't matter to me. Be pro-gun, be anti-gun.
That doesn't
Let's
matter.
be pro-capable of helping if something happens in a situation like this. So for people who don't like guns for whatever reason, like, listen, you're actually much more likely to have to be able to help somebody stop bleeding than cause somebody to be bleeding. So oftentimes I'll recommend learn first aid, right? You're probably going to be tasked with plugging a hole versus creating a hole statistically. So learn how to be helpful in these situations.
There's some really great. I've taken it, the Stop the Bleed
Yeah,
classes. They're
they're
offered
fantastic.
really throughout the U.S.
Yeah.
And I think they are very good. I think they are very helpful. I think that it should be required, to be honest with you, through a lot of professions.
I'd love
Obviously,
to see it taught in school. I cannot think of a negative
say
consequence to
that
teaching that in school.
I was gonna say that I just didn't know how that would land, with people, but I do feel that teachers and administrators, in my opinion,
Yeah.
need that. I think that's important, to know how to do. I found the course helpful,
Yeah.
and really, it's something that anyone could do, regardless, like you said, of how you feel about guns. I also think too, I am a very big proponent of this. I think a lot of times in terms of prepping, and I do talk about this a lot on my platform, we get into very complicated things. That's not like how the world works and functions. We need to strip it down, in my opinion, to like the most basic level. And so, if you are someone who maybe a gun's not for you, or maybe you're whatever, I think we need to be like, I mean, I just have them sitting right here. Why? I have no idea. But like, I have non lethal, forms of things to use to defend yourself. And so
What
I,
were those things?
oh, well, one is pepper spray, and then it goes in here. I just haven't put it in here yet.
Have
This
you
is
ever used pepper spray in a contained environment?
so yes, with the FBI.
Be prepared for it to get everywhere and on everybody.
So this is why it's not in here because
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of pepper spray. But this I usually have it in my purse. I just
Yeah.
had it out for some
Use
reason.
the gel. It's way
Um,
less likely to get all over you.
So that's what this is. This is the gel.
Perfect. Good.
And so for me, this has a flashlight. This has an alarm.
Awesome.
Alarm, flashlight, all the things all in one thing, which I like personally, to have it all in one place because I teach at a university. We can't have lethal weapons
For sure.
on campus. And so this is just a better option. But
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with educating yourself on what you feel the most comfortable with. In terms of being prepared to fight back. But I also think it is important, just on a prepper level, to have things like canned food available, to have pallets of water available, things that don't expire. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. That doesn't make you a prepper, it just makes you prepared, like you said.
Totally agree. I support people, where I live in rural Montana, depending on where you're at, 911 might be about 30 minutes away.
Right.
That is a long time when shit is going down or you're trying to help somebody and you're at the limits of your knowledge and capability and equipment. And thing like the winter is, winter's coming, to quote a show that I never got into. So I'm aware that Game of Thrones, they said that, but I never got into the show. I mean, we're talking power outages, cold snaps, you may not be able to hit the grocery store. What I do like about northwestern Montana, where I live, a little bit smaller, there's a more community aspect, and a lot of people I would put into the category of a little bit more rugged outdoorsmen. They solve the problems on their own, which isn't a possibility for somebody in New York City, like the deer
Dallas.
population in Dallas. Yeah, it's like
Dallas is
Totally.
doing that. Yeah.
yeah. But when you can, awesome. And if you have the ability to do so, awesome. Because everybody's in a different economic or living situation, but there's always a little bit of room where you could tighten the screw just a little bit. And that tightening will help you when things start shaking. And I think people are better off for it.
100%.
Yeah. What do you want to leave the listeners with? I want to be respectful of your time.
I think my biggest thing is that terrorism didn't die with bin Laden. I think
Didn't start with them either.
correct. And I think, we think that because bin Laden is dead, that we don't need to focus on this issue. But the problem is you cannot kill an idea. You cannot. It won't die. And with the advent of social media and then the proliferation of social media, I actually fear that terrorism is even a bigger issue than it was in the lead up to 9/11 because more people are becoming radicalized and more people have access to the internet. So I don't mean to scare people, but I just think it's something we need to keep top of mind.
I'm okay with people getting scared a little bit. If it gets them to live, you know what I mean? I don't want them to live in fear. And I'm not somebody who catastrophizes,
Yeah, I don't either.
but it's okay to recognize that there is danger out there because then you can put together at least an initial plan, get off the X. It's really simple, but important tactic.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Tracy, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you again for listening to Change Agents, an Ironclad original presented by Firecracker Farm. See you all next week with a brand new episode and a brand new guest. See you then.
And now a sneak preview of Target Intelligence, PSYOP.
You know, one of the things that stood out is CIA's involvement in mainstream media and Hollywood. And I think a lot of people have suspected that over the years. You know, you see a lot of comments and a lot of discussions about that, but this makes it even more real because there's very specific examples of how they do that, how they approach, what the conversations are like, why they do it. And like we said in the documentary, this is just scratching the surface. This goes very deep.
And now, an exclusive preview of Target Intelligence PSYOP, Chapter 4, The Price of Admission.
Lady love to change the night of falling.
I'm Sean Ryan. This is Target Intelligence, PSYOP, an Ironclad original.
Maybe you won't believe what I'm going to say, but I swear it's the truth.
Chapter 4.
Go to the moon!
Hollywood's got you.
The Price of Admission. During the time much of the world was shut down during COVID,
Breaking news, just COVID-19. A brand new coronavirus. A new normal.
Dr. Matthew Alford was at his home in the UK when he received a strange delivery to his door.
I think it was literally in lockdown. You know, I was doing nothing in my life, as you can imagine, and I got a letter through the door, and it was from the CIA, and I thought, this is bizarre.
Dr. Alford is an author and lecturer of the University of Bath who specializes in studying the relationship between the entertainment industry and the U.S. military. After opening the envelope, Dr. Alford found himself reading the personal emails of one of the most famous figures in Hollywood.
Oh, why have I got a letter from the CIA? And why am I reading all of Ben Affleck's emails?
Then he remembered, 8 years prior to receiving the letter, he'd filed a Freedom of Information Act request, seeking to find out if the CIA had secretly worked on the 2012 film Argo. In the movie, which was also directed by Ben Affleck, Affleck plays a real-life CIA operative named Tony Mendez. In 1979, Mendez was part of an elaborate plot to evacuate 6 U.S. diplomats from Iran. After the United States Embassy in Tehran was taken over by Iranian Islamists, though 66 members of the embassy staff were taken hostage, 6 managed to evade capture and escape to the homes of the Canadian embassy officers. The CIA needed to figure out a way to get them out of the country while they hid with the Canadian embassy staff. Mendez's plan involved infiltrating the country by posing as Hollywood producers who wanted to film a big-budget movie in Iran.
I got an idea.
They're a Canadian film crew for a science fiction movie.
I fly into Tehran. We all fly out together as a film crew. I need you to help me make a fake movie.
So you want to come to Hollywood and act like a big shot without actually doing anything?
Yeah.
You'll fit right in.
Though the film was a hit and won an Academy Award for Best Picture, some critics were quick to point out the liberties Affleck seemed to take with the story of what actually happened. Many critics noted how the Hollywood film version seemed to inflate the role the CIA played in the rescue. The Canadian magazine Maclean's wrote, "The movie rewrites history at Canada's expense, making Hollywood and the CIA the saga's heroic saviors, while Canadian Ambassador Ken Taylor is demoted to a kindly concierge." In response to the criticism, in later versions of the film, Affleck would change the on-screen postscript text to read,
"The involvement of the CIA complemented efforts of the Canadian Embassy to free the 6 held in Tehran. To this day, the story stands as an enduring model of international cooperation between governments."
What Dr. Alford wanted to know is if the CIA itself was involved in Affleck's artistic liberties with the story. Dr. Alford is the author of the book National Security Cinema, The Shocking New Evidence of Government Control in Hollywood, and co-produced the documentary Theaters of War. He and his fellow researchers frequently submit Freedom of Information Act requests to learn about the CIA and the military's efforts to influence the movies and TV shows Americans watch. As it turned out, the CIA was very involved in supporting Argo.
And of course, it was that I'd put in a Freedom of Information Act request in 2012 that had taken over 8 years to come through. No one knew that there'd been actual contact between CIA and producers for that show until this information came through. So there are several of these shows that actually, whether they intended to cover it up or not, basically the information didn't come out that they'd been working on those, that they'd been working closely with the producers.
And, in many cases, the changes that the CIA and military branches were making to major blockbusters and TV shows weren't just minor tweaks to characters for accuracy. What Dr. Alford and his colleagues have uncovered is that in many cases, the military directly oversees key elements of mainstream entertainment. Dr. Alford uncovered that Affleck even visited the CIA headquarters to meet with key figures there in the lead up to the movie. However, documents Dr. Alford reviewed show that permission to film at the Langley campus was only given after several script reviews by the CIA. Emails between officials at CIA called the film a, quote, good news CIA story. In an interview with The Guardian leading up to the movie, Affleck acknowledged the primary similarity between what his job as a Hollywood director is and what the CIA does: deception.
One of the themes of Argo is about storytelling and how powerful it is, from political theater to the way we kind of communicate to our children to the way that we inspire people, and it's interesting that Hollywood and the clandestine services are both spend most of their time convincing people that something that's not true is in fact true.
He also added this half-joking observation.
I think probably Hollywood is full of CIA agents, and we just don't know it. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to discover that, this was extremely common.
But Affleck was already familiar with what it was like to work with the agency when he collaborated with them on Argo. He'd previously worked with them on the Jack Ryan film, The Sum of All Fears. His former wife, Jennifer Gardner, starred in the TV show Alias, where she played a super spy. The series was supported by the CIA, who worked closely with producers on it. Garner would even be featured in a recruitment video for future spies.
I'm Jennifer Garner. I play a CIA officer on the ABC TV series Alias. In the real world, the CIA serves as our country's first line of defense in the ongoing war against international terrorism. If you're an American citizen and seek a challenging, rewarding career where you can make a difference in the world and here at home, contact the agency.
But what Matthew Alford and his colleagues have discovered is the connections go deeper than most in the public can imagine.
The US military has worked with Hollywood producers for about 110 years or so.
As Dr. Alford explains, the military has long seen value in being able to affect how they are portrayed on screen.